Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into something profound, how we process images of suffering.
Yeah, it's a heavy topic, but incredibly relevant.
Absolutely. Our mission is to unpack Susan Sontag's amazing 2003 book regarding the pain of others.
A really seminal work.
It is, and this isn't just, a history lesson about war photos. It's much deeper. It's about the complicated dance between those images, how we perceive them, and, well, our collective memory.
How these pictures shape everything.
Exactly. From the very first, often staged war scenes right up to the instant, sometimes raw images flooding our feeds today. How do they change how we understand conflict? How do they pull in our emotions?
And how do they build the stories we tell ourselves? It's fascinating.
Sontag nails this central paradox right away, doesn't she?
She really does. This idea that photos can make war, happening miles away, feel incredibly real. Immediate, like you're almost there.
That sense of realness.
But then there's the flip side. The sheer amount of these images, this constant stream,
Mm-hmm.
it can actually numb us, desensitize us.
It's like walking a tightrope, isn't it? Between awareness and just numbness.
A very fine line. And that's where Sontag pushes us as viewers. What does it mean to watch this pain, often, let's be honest, from a place of safety?
Yeah, from our couches, scrolling on our phones. It forces you to confront the ethics of it all. Looking at suffering through a camera lens, what is that actually doing to us?
And what's the real impact? I mean, are these images genuine calls to action? Do they build empathy?
Do they sometimes just satisfy a kind of morbid curiosity, letting us consume suffering without really engaging?
It's uncomfortable to think about.
So navigating this, especially now with screens bombarding us constantly, it's tough.
It really is.
So in this deep dive, we'll trace that whole arc, from the very beginnings of war photography, often quite manipulated through the rise of photojournalism,
To today's image glut, as Sontag calls it.
we'll look hard at authenticity standards, how they've shifted, the huge role of captions, how they can frame or twist everything.
Oh, the captions are key. Propaganda, too.
Definitely. And that big debate, the impact versus the ethics of showing suffering. Sontag says images are a species of rhetoric. We need to unpack what that really means for us as viewers and for the memories we build together.
Okay, let's start at the beginning then. Mid-19th century. Photography is brand new, basically.
Right, the camera's first baby steps onto the battlefield, and what's striking is how the technology itself dictated so much. People like Roger Fenton. What they couldn't shoot is almost as important as what they did.
Totally. Early cameras were just unwieldy.
Yeah.
Huge, heavy boxes.
Not exactly run and gun.
Not at all. They needed tripods, long setup times. You had wet plate processes, needing a darkroom tent right there on location, chemicals, glass plates.
Wow, in a war zone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the exposure times were long, seconds, maybe even a minute.
So anything moving fast.
Forget it. Soldiers charging, explosions, the sheer chaos of battle, intense pain.
Yeah.
It was all happening too fast for the camera. It's fundamentally off camera.
Which brings us to Roger Fenton, Crimean War, 1854-56. He wasn't just some hobbyist, was he? He was official.
Oh, very much official. Sent by the British government, actually at the suggestion of Prince Albert.
So a mission, not just documentation.
Definitely a mission. Back home, public opinion was turning against the war. There were these reports, printed accounts of terrible conditions, soldiers suffering. It was getting really unpopular.
So Fenton was sent to? What, counteract that?
Pretty much, he was, in effect, a PR photographer, tasked with creating a more positive impression, cleaning up the war's image for the public back home.
Which meant, as Sontag shows, a heavily censored view.
Absolutely. His instructions were crystal clear. No pictures of the dead, no maimed soldiers, no one seriously ill.
So what did he shoot?
These very carefully arranged scenes. Tableau, Sontag calls them. Military life, but behind the lines. Officers looking dignified, troops in formation. It makes the war look like a sort of dignified all-male group outing.
Stripped of all the horror, the grit, the death.
Completely. And the most famous example of this manipulation is the Valley of the Shadow of Death.
That iconic image. Sounds grim.
The title is heavy, yeah. But Sontag points out how Fenton actually constructed the scene's drama. He took two versions from the same spot.
Two versions.
Yeah. In the first, the cannonballs are mostly off in the ditch. But for the second shot, the one that became famous, he had them scattered all over the road itself.
He moved them, staged it.
He oversaw the scattering, yes, to make it look more dramatic, more like the immediate aftermath of intense fighting. It was a deliberate manipulation for effect, even though the place itself was dangerous.
Incredible. So right from the get-go, authenticity was complicated, being shaped.
It was being invented, in a way. Then you have Felice Beato, Indian Mutiny, 1857-58. He was a real pioneer, covered multiple wars.
And his work was different.
Much bolder. He started showing after-the-battle images, trying to depict, as Sontag puts it, a fearsome exaction of British military might.
How so? What did he show?
Well, take his photo of the Secunderabad Palace in Lucknow. After the British attack, the courtyard was filled with bodies. Beato photographed it months later. But he didn't just shoot the ruins. He apparently constructed the ruin as an unburial ground. He positioned some local people near pillars and, chillingly, scattered human bones likely collected from the site around the courtyard.
He arranged human remains.
That's what the historical accounts suggest. It was this incredibly stark, early depiction of war's horrific aftermath, a very different approach from Fenton's sanitized views, showing the brutal power.
Wow. Okay, then the American Civil War, 1860s, Matthew Brady's team. This seems like a turning point for documentation.
It was huge. Brady declared, "The camera is the eye of history." This ambition to record objectively, tying into that growing value placed on realism.
And they showed things differently.
For the first time, really, you see these brutally legible pictures of dead soldiers, explicit images of death on the battlefield.
That must have been shocking.
Sontag says it clearly violated a taboo. But the justification was this simple duty to record. The camera's claim to truth. The public was seeing something much closer to the grim reality.
But even then, with this aim of realism, was there still manipulation?
There was, even in famous images like the home of a rebel sharpshooter from Gettysburg. Later analysis showed Brady's team, probably Gardner or O'Sullivan, moved a body.
Moved a dead soldier.
Yes. They positioned a Confederate soldier's body behind some rocks for better composition and apparently added a rifle as a prop, one that wasn't even the type a sharpshooter would use.
So even aiming for realism, that artistic impulse to stage, to compose, was still there.
It highlights that tension perfectly between just documenting and actually creating an image, a narrative, which brings us to how people reacted to finding out about this staging.
Right. Sontag says people were surprised and disappointed, both then and now.
Especially when it involved those really core moments, intimate climaxes above all of love and death. Finding out those were posed feels like a betrayal.
Why do you think that disappointment is so strong?
I think it taps into this deep desire we have for the photographer to be invisible, a spy, capturing things as they genuinely happen, unposed, unexpected.
Not a director setting up a scene.
Exactly. We want that unvarnished truth, especially in moments that feel sacred, like death. We want the camera to be this pure witness.
So when that trust is broken, it feels wrong. Like the image's power is somehow diminished.
Yeah, or at least complicated.
Yeah.
And it makes you question what you're really looking at. This expectation for absolute authenticity is huge.
And as the technology got better, allowing more spontaneity, did that expectation just grow stronger?
Absolutely. Which sets the stage for the next big shifts in photojournalism.
Okay, let's move into that evolution. Authenticity becomes the goal, or at least the ideal, even if it's still debated. What changed technologically to make that possible?
The big game changer was lightweight, handheld cameras, like the Leica, and fast 35mm film.
So portability.
Huge difference.
Yeah.
Suddenly, photographers weren't tethered to tripods and darkroom tents. They could move with the action, get in the thick of battle.
Closer to the soldiers, closer to civilians.
Exactly. You start seeing images of civilian victims and exhausted, begrimed soldiers studied up close. An intimacy and immediacy that just wasn't possible before.
And the Spanish Civil War, 1936-39, seems to be where this really takes off. Sontag calls it the first war covered in the modern sense.
It was groundbreaking. You had professional photographers right there at the front lines, capturing combat, documenting bombed cities.
And crucially, getting those images out quickly.
Yes, published within days, sometimes hours, in newspapers and magazines worldwide, reaching a mass audience almost in real time. That speed and reach were new.
And this is where we get Robert Capa's The Falling Soldier, possibly the most famous and debated war photo ever.
Absolutely iconic. It seems to capture a soldier at the very instant of death. But yeah, the authenticity debate has raged for decades. Was it real? Was it staged? Was it a training exercise?
We still don't know for sure.
We don't. And Sontag uses this to ask a fundamental question. Does an image's power rely only on its literal truth? Or does its symbolic meaning matter just as much, maybe even more?
So even if it was staged, its impact as a symbol of the war, of dying for a cause, is undeniable.
That's the argument. It's become embedded in our memory of that conflict, regardless of the precise facts of its creation. It speaks to a kind of truth, even if not a strictly factual one.
Then comes Vietnam, starting in '62. Another huge turning point, maybe even bigger because of TV.
Oh, absolutely. The first to be witnessed day after day by television cameras. Sontag calls it a tele-intimacy with death and destruction, right into people's living rooms every night.
That constant exposure must have changed things.
It dramatically raised the bar for authenticity in photojournalism, too. Think of Hun Kong-ut's photo from 1972, the young girl, Kim Phuc, running naked, burned by napalm.
Unforgettable, horrifying.
And as Sontag says, it cannot possibly be posed. The raw agony is undeniable. Images like that, showing the horrific reality, especially the impact on civilians, helped establish a higher standard of journalistic probity.
So, fewer obviously staged photos after Vietnam.
Generally, yes. The expectation for genuine documentation became much stronger, both from the public and within journalism itself.
This era also saw photojournalists becoming more prominent figures, right? Like star witnesses.
Yes, and the founding of Magnum Photos in 1947 by Capa, Cartier-Bresson, Chimay-Bublé.
Yeah.
That was significant.
Why Magnum?
It wasn't just about photographers getting fairer contracts, though that was part of it. Their charter spoke of this enlarged, ethically weighted mission.
What did that mean?
It meant seeing themselves as fair-minded witnesses, chronicling their time without national bias. Photography as a global thing, the photographer's job was to cover the world. It was a claim to objectivity, to moral authority.
Okay, so we have this drive towards authenticity, this ethical mission. But Sontag still insists photographs aren't simple facts. She calls them a species of rhetoric. What's she getting at there?
She's saying they never just are. They always do something. They aren't just mirrors. They reiterate, they simplify, they agitate, they create the illusion of consensus.
How so? How do they simplify or agitate?
Well, think about framing. What a photographer chooses not to show is as important as what's in the picture. A tight shot on an angry face at a protest makes a different argument than a wide shot of a peaceful crowd.
So the choices make it persuasive, like an argument.
Exactly. Every choice angle, moment, focus shapes the message. It's a form of persuasion, a rhetoric, not just a neutral record.
And captions play a huge role in directing that rhetoric.
A massive role. Sontag gives that chilling example from the Balkan Wars. The exact same photos of dead children.
Used by both sides.
Yes. Used in Serb briefings claiming Croat atrocities, and in Croat briefings claiming Serb atrocities, just by changing the caption.
That's horrifying. It shows how easily meaning is manipulated.
Utterly. Captions can explain or falsify, and it points to another truth.
Yeah.
We often see what we want to see in images. They tend to quicken hatred of the foe or confirm our existing beliefs.
So if an image challenges our deeply held views,
We're likely to dismiss it, say it's staged, fake news, propaganda. We interpret images through our own filters.
which means even a horrifying photo of an atrocity doesn't guarantee a single response, like everyone suddenly wanting peace.
Not at all. Sontag is clear. Those images provoke opposing responses. For some, it's a call for peace. For others, a cry for revenge. And for many, maybe just a sort of detached awareness that, yeah, terrible things happen.
The image itself doesn't dictate the reaction. It depends on who's looking.
Entirely. Your beliefs, your connection to the conflict, your politics, it all shapes how you read the image, which makes them powerful but unpredictable tools.
Okay, let's talk about us, the viewers. This constant flood of images, Sontag calls it image glut. Does it inevitably numb us? The desensitization argument.
It's a persistent worry, and not just a modern one. Sontag smartly traces it back. Wordsworth in 1800 worried about overstimulation dulling the mind.
Really? Back then?
Yeah. And Baudelaire in the 1860s called newspapers a tissue of horrors, leading to a kind of savage torpor. So this idea that too much bad news, too many awful sights can make us shut down emotionally, it's been around.
But Sontag herself kind of revisits her earlier thoughts on this, right? She previously argued that repeated exposure makes things less real, that photos shrivel sympathy.
She does. In Regarding the Pain of Others, she questions that earlier certainty. She asks point blank, does shock have term limits?
And what's her revised answer? Is it yes or no?
It's nuanced. She definitely acknowledges habituation happens, especially with TV, where the constant image flow means no single image gets privileged. It just keeps moving, fostering this instability of attention. We get restless, bored.
So some numbing is possible.
Yes, but she pushes back against the idea that all images inevitably lose their power. She doesn't fully buy into total desensitization. Some things still shock.
What kinds of images retain that power then? Why do some stick with us?
Often, she suggests, it's the images you can't look at too often. Their horror isn't easily digestible or normalized.
Like what?
Think about those devastating photos of WWI veterans with facial disfigurements,
Hmm?
or the images of atomic bomb survivors from Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They confront you with something so extreme, so irreducible, that they resist becoming just another picture. They remain raw, unsettling.
They defy being filed away.
Exactly. They break through the noise, perhaps.
And how do these photos, the ones that stick and the ones that blur together, actually shape our memory, both individually and, collectively?
Sontag argues that the basic unit of memory is often the single image. It's a quick way of apprehending something, a compact form for memorizing it.
Like a mental snapshot.
Yeah. Photos become like quotations, proverbs, instantly recognizable symbols for complex events or ideas. They trigger whole chains of thought and feeling.
But she makes a crucial distinction about collective memory. She says it's more like collective instruction. What's the difference?
This is a really sharp point. She argues memory is fundamentally individual. What we call collective memory isn't really shared remembering, but rather a process where ideologies create substantiating archives of images.
So institutions select images.
Exactly. Governments, museums, media. They choose representative images that package ideas, trigger predictable thoughts and feelings, and shape how a society should remember its past. It's guided, purposeful, less spontaneous memory, more deliberate instruction.
Like Holocaust museums, Yad Vashem, using iconic photos to ensure those crimes aren't forgotten.
Precisely. They're created to keep these events in public consciousness, often using those same powerful, horrifying images over and over. They function as engines of this collective instruction, shaping a specific understanding of that history.
But then she throws in that really provocative idea that evil was here versus evil was there, contrast. Why, she asks, are there so many Holocaust museums but no major national museum of slavery in the U.S.?
It's a deeply uncomfortable question, isn't it? It forces you to think about which histories get memorialized and why. Sontag suggests maybe the memory of slavery is seen as too dangerous to social stability in the U.S.
Too dangerous? How?
Because it means acknowledging that the evil was here, deeply embedded in the nation's own history and foundation, not some external evil that America fought against. She argues there's a preference for narratives where the U.S. is the rescuer, the solution, dealing with evil that was there.
That implies a selective national memory, shaped by comfort and self-image.
It strongly suggests that. Weird memories we elevate and which we downplay tells you a lot about national identity and political convenience. It's a really powerful critique.
It absolutely is. And it connects to viewer indifference. That story Sontag tells about the woman in Sarajevo.
Yeah, the woman admitting she changed the channel when images of the war in nearby Croatia came on, even while living through her own siege.
And her explanation was brutally honest. Wherever people feel safe, they will be indifferent.
It's a stark insight. That indifference, or emotional anesthesia, as Sontag calls it, might not be a lack of feeling, but maybe comes from feeling powerless. Rage and frustration turned inward.
Because if you feel you can't do anything,
You eventually turn away. It's a defense mechanism. Compassion, Sontag says, is unstable. It needs action or it withers. Without an outlet, it fades.
And then, maybe the most challenging bit. She says even our sympathy can be impertinent. How can sympathy be impertinent?
It's a tough one. She suggests sympathy becomes impertinent if it just makes us feel better, proclaiming our innocence as well as our impotence. If it stops there, just feeling sad for a moment.
Instead of what?
Instead of prompting deeper reflection, like how might my comfort, my privilege be connected, even indirectly, to the systems that cause this suffering elsewhere? It's a call to move beyond pity to critical self-awareness about our own position in the world.
So sympathy without reflection is potentially just reinforcing our detachment.
That's the danger she points to. It's asking us to really examine the function of our sympathy when we look at these images.
Wow. Okay, let's shift to the ethical minefield Sontag explores. She talks about an appetite for sites of degradation and pain, a natural human impulse.
She argues it is, drawing on history and philosophy. Plato's story of Leontius, who couldn't resist looking at corpses even though he was disgusted.
That internal conflict.
Exactly, that tropism toward the gruesome. Burke noticed a degree of delight in others' misfortunes. Hazlitt said the love of cruelty is as natural as sympathy. Sontag isn't saying we're evil, but that this uncomfortable pull exists.
So if that pull exists, does that make us all voyeurs when we look at graphic images from afar?
Sontag's conclusion is pretty blunt. The rest of us are voyeurs, whether or not we mean to be.
Ouch.
Yeah. Simply by looking, especially without direct involvement or risk, we adopt a position of detached spectatorship. It's an observation about the condition of modern viewing, more than a direct moral condemnation, perhaps. But it definitely raises ethical flags.
This connects to censorship, too, the double standards. Militaries controlling images, especially of our dead.
Absolutely. WWI, the Falklands, the First Gulf War. Strict control. The Gulf War gave us those techno-war images, missiles hitting targets. Very clean, very abstract.
Hiding the human cost.
Almost completely. And there's that deep taboo, Sontag points out, the interdiction against showing the naked face of our own dead soldiers in Western media.
But that's starkly different from how victims from other places are shown.
Night and day. Sontag notes the readiness to show full frontal views of the dead and dying from places considered remote or exotic, particularly Africa and Asia.
Why the difference? What does that say about us?
It's deeply unsettling. Does it imply we value those lives less? Does it feed into stereotypes about tragedy being inevitable elsewhere? Sontag connects it to a history of exhibiting exotic people. It suggests the suffering of the other is somehow more permissible to display, while our suffering is shielded to protect morale and national narratives.
A deeply ingrained, uncomfortable bias.
It seems so. And then there's the whole issue of aestheticizing suffering, finding beauty in horror.
Like Leonardo da Vinci wanting his battle paintings to have a challenging kind of beauty, even with gore.
Right. And Sontag acknowledges the discomfort. Finding a war photo beautiful feels wrong, heartless. Yet photography inherently transforms things. Composition, light, framing, they create aesthetic qualities. A landscape of devastation is still a landscape.
So beauty can emerge even from horror.
The medium itself tends towards that, which leads to criticism of photographers like Sebastian Salgado, his stunningly composed images of misery.
People argue they make suffering too beautiful, turn it into a spectacle.
That's the critique, that the aesthetic perfection might drain attention from the sobering subject, letting us admire the art instead of confronting the pain or its causes. Sontag also points out that often these globalized images don't name the subjects, reducing them to symbols rather than individuals.
And the lines blur even more with commercialization. Editorial photos next to ads.
Like Kappa's falling soldier right next to a hair cream ad in Life. Or Benetton using a photo of a dead Croatian soldier's bloody uniform in an ad campaign.
It just strips the image of its context, its solemnity.
Completely. Sontag argues this commercial co-option fundamentally changes how we see these images. Suffering becomes just more content in the endless stream designed to sell us things. It makes it harder to maintain any sense of reverence or gravity.
So after all this complexity staging, rhetoric, ethics, aesthetics, what are the actual limits of a photograph? Can it really tell us the whole story?
Sontag says emphatically no. Take Ron Haviv's photo of the Serb kicking the Bosnian woman. Viscerally powerful, yes. An image of brutality.
Yeah.
But it tells us very little, Sontag argues, beyond the general truth that war is hell. Who are they? Why is this happening? What's the context? The photo alone doesn't provide that. It shocks, but doesn't fully explain.
So images and narratives do different things.
Fundamentally different. Narratives, books, films, articles can make us understand. They provide context, sequence, explanation. Photographs, she says, do something else. They haunt us.
Haunt us, that's a powerful word.
It is. They freeze a moment, burn it into memory, but often without the why or how. Narratives can build understanding and maybe mobilize action more effectively because they offer that deeper context.
Which leads to maybe her most humbling point, that unbridgeable gap, that we, the distant observers, don't get it. We can't truly imagine what it was like.
It's a stark reminder of the limits of empathy through images. Every soldier, journalist, survivor who's been through it feels this gap when trying to explain it to someone who hasn't.
No image can fully cross that chasm of experience.
It seems not. Sontag even discusses Jeff Wall's Dead Troops talk, a completely staged artificial photo work, like a painting. It's not trying to be a document, but an imagining of war's horror, precisely because the reality is perhaps unimaginable for those who weren't there. It's an admission of that gap.
So, if we can't truly get it, what's the point of looking? What's the ethical value?
Sontag argues it's not a defect that we're not seared by these images. That's not their purpose, to make us feel exactly what the subjects felt, or to magically fix our ignorance.
So what is the purpose?
She says they are an invitation to pay attention, to reflect, to learn, to examine the rationalizations for mass suffering offered by established powers.
To ask questions.
Critical questions. Who caused what the picture shows? Who is responsible? Is it excusable? Was it inevitable? It's about prompting thought, not just feeling.
And her final thought really brings it home.
Yeah, that simple but profound line. There's nothing wrong with standing back and thinking.
It's a call for reflection over reaction.
Exactly. It suggests that deep thought, critical analysis, asking the hard questions. That's a vital, maybe the most vital, human response to seeing these horrific images. Not just shock, not just pity, but sustained critical engagement, understanding why it happened and our connection to it.
Wow. What a journey through Sontag's thinking. We've gone from Fenton's staged cannonballs to the complexities of digital image overload.
We've touched on authenticity versus staging, the power of captions, the whole desensitization debate, the ethics of looking.
It's so much to grapple with. Sontag really pushes us beyond just reacting with shock or sympathy. She demands more.
She forces us to think about our own role as viewers in this image-saturated world. What does it mean to look?
So for you listening, grappling with these images daily,
Yeah.
what does it mean? Is that gap, that inability to fully feel the horror, a moral failure? Or just human, a necessary shield?
And here's a final thought to chew on, building on Sontag. If memory is truly individual and collective memory is really this constructed naming, this instruction,
Yeah.
what's your personal obligation to the images that stick with you, the ones that haunt you?
Is just looking, just refusing to turn away enough? Does that fulfill their vital function?
And how do you balance that need to remember, to witness, with the danger? Sontag also warns about that too much remembering, especially of old grievances, can just lead to more bitterness, more conflict, rather than understanding.
It's a constant balancing act, isn't it? A moral and intellectual tightrope.
Every single day.
Powerful questions indeed. Thank you for joining us on this really intense deep dive into Susan Sontag's work. We hope it gives you a new way to think about the images you encounter.
Until next time.
Keep digging deeper. It gives you a new way to think about the images you encounter.
Until next time.
Keep digging deeper.